You wake up, you eat, you work, you scroll, you sleep. You think that's life, but it's not. It's motion without meaning, a heartbeat without awareness. You are biologically alive, but consciously, spiritually, emotionally dead. And the worst part? You didn't choose it. Someone chose it for you. From the moment you could walk, the programming began. What to believe, what to fear, what to chase, what to ignore. And it worked. So well, in fact, that you forgot what it meant to feel truly alive. But someone saw through it. Someone powerful. Someone who paid the price for stepping out of line. His name was John Wheeler, a former Pentagon insider, a man who knew what was behind the curtain, a man who died in a landfill while the world shrugged. His death wasn't an accident. It was a signal, a message, and if you don't see it, it wasn't meant for them. It was meant for you. John Wheeler didn't just have access, he had keys to rooms most people don't even know exist. A former senior Pentagon official, presidential aide, and expert on chemical and cyber warfare, Wheeler wasn't some fringe theorist. He was inside the machine. He shaped policy at the highest levels. He advised 3 presidents. He wrote the doctrine. He knew how war really works, how it's not just fought with weapons, but with perception, with fear, with silence. In late December 2010, something changed. Wheeler was seen stumbling around Washington, D.C., looking disoriented, paranoid, and terrified. He told people he was being followed, that his briefcase had been stolen, that they were after him, but no one listened. The media brushed it off. The police shrugged. And then, just days later, he was found in a landfill, crushed, dumped, left for dead with no explanation. They called it homicide, yet no suspects were named, no motive revealed, no investigation pursued. The case was buried, just like he was. But Wheeler didn't just randomly lose his mind. He wasn't having a breakdown. Something happened. Something triggered him. Something real. People close to him said he was investigating a classified operation, one that involved black-budget programs tied to psychological manipulation, surveillance technology, and energy-based weapons. And he'd made it clear, he wasn't okay with what he saw. In the days leading up to his death, Wheeler made several cryptic statements, references to a system that was already in place, to a reality that people were trapped in without knowing it, and to a warning he needed to share but didn't know how. That wasn't paranoia, that was exposure. He'd seen something he couldn't unsee, and when you get that close to the center, you become a threat, not because you're violent, not because you're reckless, but because you can no longer be controlled. There are patterns here, ones we've been conditioned not to look for. A man in a high position begins asking the wrong questions. He starts talking about unseen mechanisms of control. Then, he's discredited, disappeared, or dead. History repeats because we don't pay attention the first time. And John Wheeler wasn't the first, but the way he died, the way it was covered up, was different. It was rushed, sloppy, almost desperate, as if whoever wanted him gone needed it done fast. What could make someone with that level of clearance so unstable, so shaken, that he wandered around in public, visibly frightened, begging for help? It wasn't guilt. It wasn't madness. It was the realization that everything he'd helped build was being used for something darker, something invisible, but all-encompassing. It's easy to dismiss people like Wheeler as tragic outliers, but what if he wasn't the exception? What if he was the warning? What if the war he was trying to expose wasn't political or military, but psychological, and it's already being waged against you? There are some things we can't say here, and some truths that go beyond what platforms like this will allow. That's why we created Insights Academy, a free newsletter where we share what we can't publish on YouTube. And right now, you'll get a free copy of the Kybalion ebook when you sign up, link in the description, Because what Wheeler may have discovered was something deeper than corruption or covert operations. He saw the system behind the system, the program that runs silently in the background of your life, telling you what to feel, what to want, and what to fear. He saw how that system doesn't need chains or weapons to control you. It only needs your unawareness, your obedience, your silence. And once you see that, once you really understand it, there's no going back. You stop being just another number in the system, and that makes you dangerous. John Wheeler wasn't just a policy expert. He was an insider to the kinds of programs that never show up in public budgets, where the language is buried in acronyms and redacted lines. These are the programs where reality itself is studied, bent, and quietly weaponized. The kind of research that leaves no fingerprints, no smoke, no blast radius, only behavior changes, mental fatigue, emotional instability, and quiet compliance. What Wheeler stumbled onto wasn't just a secret, it was a system built on black-budget technology designed not to destroy cities, but to dismantle consciousness. These aren't science fiction theories or fringe conspiracies. The patents exist, the military studies exist, and the timelines align. Directed energy weapons, electromagnetic frequency manipulation, behavioral modification, research, cognitive disruption, all real, all funded, all tested. What do you think happens when military-grade psychological operations are turned inward? When the battlefield become the human mind? That's not speculation, that's documentation. There's mounting evidence that Wheeler was looking into the domestic use of neuro-influencing tools. Things like active denial systems, microwave-based crowd control devices, and frequency-based emotional regulation. But more disturbing than the tools themselves is the way they're deployed. Invisible, ambient, seamless. You won't know you've been targeted. You won't hear a hum. You won't feel a zap. But suddenly you're tired all the time. You can't think clearly. You're anxious without cause. You're passive when you used to question. You're compliant without knowing why. This is control without contact. Power without confrontation. It doesn't require troops or tanks, just infrastructure, bandwidth, and silence. And once it's in place, it becomes self-reinforcing. You don't need to be watched. You just need to believe you're being watched. You don't need to be threatened. You just need to fear becoming an outlier. Fear becomes the leash, and the leash becomes the comfort. Wheeler was looking at a map most people don't know exists. A map of influence, signals, systems, and symbols that overlay everyday life. He realized something fundamental. The war is no longer fought with violence. It's fought with vibration. Perception is the new battlefield, and whoever controls perception controls reality. This isn't about paranoia. This is about pattern recognition. Why do you think mental health disorders have exploded in the last 2 decades? Why are attention spans collapsing? Why are people losing the will to act, the drive to question, the ability to stay present? You've been taught it's a coincidence, a result of lifestyle or personal failure. But what if it's none of those things? What if it's calibration, an engineered emotional flattening? There's a reason Wheeler was afraid. He'd seen what came next. And once you understand how perception can be sculpted, how belief can be installed remotely, how attention can be hijacked without your consent, you start to see the system for what it really is. Not a government, not a corporation, not a conspiracy, but a grid. And the most terrifying part? You live inside it. You work, eat, sleep, and scroll inside it. You trust it, you serve it, you defend it. Because it doesn't feel like a cage. It feels like the world. But the cage doesn't need to look like a prison. It only needs to feel familiar, comfortable, invisible. And that's exactly how they built it. There was a time when control meant force, guns, chains, cages. But those methods are crude, expensive, and visible. Today's system doesn't need to break your body. It only needs to separate you from your own mind. That's how they win. Not by attacking the flesh, but by suffocating the spirit. What John Wheeler realized before his death is that most people aren't alive anymore, not in any meaningful way. They are functioning, yes, moving, breathing, consuming, but awareness, autonomy, presence, gone. And it didn't happen suddenly. It happened slowly. So slowly that you thought it was normal. This is what he called the soft apocalypse. Not an explosion, not a collapse. Just a quiet, gradual death of consciousness. One distraction at a time, one convenience at a time, until there's nothing left but patterns and responses. Until you wake up, not to a life you chose, but to a routine you can't explain. You don't remember when the joy left, or when the spark faded. You just know it's gone, and you were too busy to notice it slipping away. That's the strategy. If they can keep you busy, they don't need to keep you chained. If they can keep you entertained, they don't need to keep you imprisoned. If they can keep you medicated, distracted, indebted, anxious, addicted, overstimulated, and spiritually numb, they win. You won't rebel. You won't resist. You won't even remember what freedom is supposed to feel like, and they'll make sure you never ask the real questions. Because the moment you do, the illusion cracks. The moment you pause long enough to feel your own life, you'll realize it doesn't belong to you. It's been rented out to screens, routines, and opinions that aren't yours. Your thoughts have been templated, your dreams pre-selected, your fears installed like software. You were programmed to run a script. Wake up, check your phone, go to work, sit in traffic, pay your bills, watch your shows, repeat. And the only thing that changes is the content on the screen. The rhythm never shifts. You keep moving, but you don't go anywhere. You keep aging, but you don't evolve. You keep earning, but you never arrive. It's not a life. It's a loop. Wheeler saw that the system was no longer about governance. It was about architecture, designing environments that suppress awareness, training people to monitor themselves, encouraging rituals that feel natural but serve control, like the school bell, like the national anthem, like the pledge, like the 9 to 5, like Black Friday, like scrolling. These aren't just habits, they're psychological fences. Invisible, yes, but reinforced daily. And once you're inside this maze, it becomes self-policing. Try breaking the pattern, and you'll feel the pushback from your peers, from your family, from your own fear. The system doesn't need to punish you anymore. It just lets your conditioning do the work. This is what Wheeler was trying to reveal before he vanished into silence. That death isn't just a biological event. It's a spiritual condition. And most people are already in it. They're hollowed out from within. Empty shells with functioning shells, walking corpses with dead intuition, and what's worse, they don't even know it. But now you do. You've felt it before, haven't you? That subtle emptiness, that low hum of dissatisfaction you can't explain. That sense that something's off. But everyone around you says this is just life. It's not life. It's the program running uninterrupted. It's the world they built to keep you docile and dependent. And the longer you stay in it, without questioning, the deeper you go into the dead. Because when they steal your awareness, they don't have to steal anything else. You'll give it away willingly. You weren't just born into a system. You were born into a story, a carefully constructed narrative, designed not to inform you, but to shape you. From the cartoons you watched before you could spell your name, to the breaking news that floods your feed today, every image, every plotline, every slogan has been part of a long, deliberate process, not to entertain, not to educate, but to guide your thoughts toward one outcome: obedience. The characters you admired most as a child, the heroes, were never rebels. They didn't tear down the system. They protected it. They followed the rules. They were rewarded for conformity. They sacrificed personal truth for public approval. They stood against chaos and upheld order, no matter what that order looked like. And the villains? They weren't always evil. They were different, unpredictable, disruptive. They asked the wrong questions. They challenged authority. They had to be silenced, not because they were wrong, but because they didn't play the game. And that's the point. From the very beginning, you were trained to associate goodness with submission and danger with resistance. This isn't storytelling. It's behavioral training. The media didn't stop at fairy tales. It evolved with you. Teen shows taught you that popularity matters more than authenticity. Music told you what to value: money, status, validation. News cycles conditioned you to respond with fear, outrage, apathy, then forget, repeat. It wasn't designed to inform. It was designed to exhaust. If your nervous system is always in reaction, there's no space for introspection, no energy left for critical thought. And that's not accidental. It's architecture. John Wheeler understood that the real power of media isn't in what it shows you, but what it omits. The omissions are the message. The stories not told. The names not mentioned. The questions never asked. When Wheeler died, you didn't see headlines screaming for justice. You didn't see hour-long investigations into his connections. You saw silence, shrugging, disinterest, because acknowledgement would mean unraveling the whole thread. Why do you think entertainment today feels hollow, manufactured, predictable? Because it is. It's not just lazy writing, it's safe messaging. You're being spoon-fed scripts that reinforce the idea that everything is fine, that questioning makes you dangerous, and that discomfort is a defect, not a sign of awakening. That's not art. That's compliance disguised as content. And it goes deeper. The culture you claim as your own. Holidays, traditions, slogans, memes. It's all been infiltrated, co-opted, repackaged, and sold back to you. Christmas isn't about family. It's a consumer ritual. Independence Day isn't about freedom. It's about performative nationalism. Even your slang, your humor, your aesthetics has been engineered through trend algorithms and marketing campaigns. You don't just consume culture, you've been programmed to become a product of it. You laugh at the same punchlines, wear the same clothes, mimic the same phrases, because deviation feels risky. Not because you lack creativity, but because you've been trained to avoid standing out. That's the culture of the dead, a world where identity is outsourced and thought is recycled. Wheeler saw this, not just the surveillance or the weapons, but the narrative engineering, the death of originality, the weaponization of attention. And he understood something vital. Once you control the story, you don't need to control the people, because the story becomes the cage, the plot becomes the leash. And as long as you feel entertained, you won't ask who's writing the script. And the script they've written for you, it ends the same way every time. Keep working, keep scrolling, keep spending. Don't ask questions. Don't wake up. Just stay in line. And when your time comes, they won't need to bury you. You were never really alive. The most effective control doesn't announce itself. It doesn't march through the streets or knock on your door in the middle of the night. It whispers. It hides in the margins. It speaks in symbols, not words, because symbols bypass logic and go straight into the subconscious. And once they're planted, they grow unnoticed. John Wheeler understood this. He wasn't just looking at policies or programs. He was tracking a language of control embedded in everyday life. And the more he followed it, the more dangerous he became. Look around you. The logos, the colors, the rituals, the slogans, they're not just decoration, they're communication. a constant visual language that tells you who to trust, what to want, and what to ignore. The pyramid on your currency, the corporate eye watching you from every device, the repetition of red, white, and blue in places where it doesn't even make sense. These aren't coincidences. They're symbols of authority, stability, nationalism, designed not to inform, but to condition. And they work because you've seen them since before you knew what they meant. And by the time you understand them, it's too late. The association is automatic. That's the power of symbolism. It doesn't need to convince your conscious mind. It just needs to embed itself where you can't defend against it. And when you start to notice them, really notice, you begin to see the same patterns showing up everywhere. In advertising, in architecture, in entertainment. Why do so many elite events, award shows, galas, ceremonies, look more like rituals than celebrations? Why do the same shapes, numbers, and gestures repeat year after year across different industries? Why do people who step out of line, artists, journalists, whistleblowers, suddenly disappear, lose their minds, or become the punchline of late-night shows? Wheeler saw it too. He noticed the synchronicities, the symbols, the eerie repetition. And more importantly, he realized that the silence around these things wasn't natural. It was enforced. The mainstream doesn't just avoid uncomfortable questions, it sterilizes them, sanitizes them, replaces them with noise and spectacle. So when someone like Wheeler tries to say, "Look deeper," they're immediately framed as unstable, or dangerous, or gone. And that silence isn't just absence, it's presence. It's a warning. Because when something disappears from the conversation completely, you need to ask, who benefits from that silence? His death was never meant to be explained. It was meant to be buried. Not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. They didn't want you looking too closely, because you might start to see what he saw. That control no longer looks like tyranny. It looks like routine. It looks like brand loyalty. It looks like safety. And it is enforced, not through violence, but through language and omission. What you aren't told is often more dangerous than what you are. And this silence is strategic. It trains you to doubt your instincts. You notice something strange, a pattern, a phrase, a gesture, and your mind immediately shuts it down. You tell yourself you're imagining it, that it doesn't mean anything, that it's just coincidence, because that's what you've been trained to do, to dismiss, to ignore, to laugh it off. But the ones in control, they don't laugh. They watch, they measure, they study your reactions. They know the symbols work. That's why they keep using them. Wheeler tried to warn people, not with a megaphone, but in fragments, offhand comments, strange behaviors, cryptic notes. But the pattern was there. He knew the symbols weren't just decoration. They were programming tools. And the system that used them didn't care whether you believed in them or not. It only cared that you saw them and obeyed without knowing why. This is how they talk to each other, not with press releases or public statements, but with signs, codes, recurring visuals. You were taught to look at the world through a material lens. What can I touch? What can I prove? But the real war has always been energetic, psychological, symbolic. That's where the manipulation begins, and where it hides. You were trained to ignore the silence, to look away from the symbols, to scroll past the signals. But now that you've seen them, you can't unsee them. Now that you've heard the quiet, you realize how loud it's always been. John Wheeler didn't die because he was reckless. He died because he got too close to a truth most people aren't ready to face. A truth that's far more disturbing than corruption or classified technology. He realized that the real war, the one no one talks about, isn't being fought over land or politics or money. It's being fought over attention, over consciousness itself. And the terrifying part, most people have already surrendered. The war on consciousness doesn't use bullets. It doesn't need tanks. It uses saturation, distraction, overload. It keeps your mind so full of noise, alerts, updates, notifications, and drama that you no longer know how to hear your own thoughts. You become dependent on the system to tell you what's true, what's urgent, what's real. It's not surveillance in the old sense. It's psychological warfare, disguised as convenience. And like all warfare, it's strategic. They don't want to erase your thoughts. They want to shape them before you have a chance to think them. Your preferences? Installed. Your opinions? Preloaded. Your beliefs? Curated by algorithms that learn faster than you can unlearn. What used to be classified as manipulation is now called engagement. What was once studied in intelligence labs is now embedded in social platforms. It's not happening behind your back, it's happening in plain sight, and you're rewarding it with your attention. This isn't science fiction. The same government that funded MK Ultra, the CIA's mid-20th century mind control program, didn't just shut it down. It evolved. It went digital. It went commercial. The tools became smoother, faster, invisible. And now, you carry them in your pocket. You scroll through them when you're bored. You depend on them for social validation, for news, for meaning. They've replaced your internal compass with a feed. John Wheeler knew that the war on consciousness had already shifted gears. It wasn't just about manipulating individuals anymore. It was about engineering collective agreement, herding minds, synchronizing belief. That's why dissent is treated as madness. That's why independent thought is dangerous. Because once the system is set up to run itself through social conformity, any anomaly becomes a threat. He spoke of compliance being manufactured at the subconscious level. That's not metaphor. That's the playbook. They don't need to threaten you to control you. They just create environments that reward your obedience and isolate your resistance. Step out of line, and suddenly, you're the problem. Not because you're wrong, but because you didn't follow the script. And the scariest part? Most people defend the very systems that are erasing them. They don't just tolerate the tools of control, they celebrate them. New apps, new updates, new tracking, new ways to quantify your worth with numbers, followers, and digital applause. You're being conditioned to crave the very cage that keeps you numb. And it's working, because they don't need to kill your body. They don't even need to silence your voice. They just need to own your mind long enough for you to forget it was ever yours. And once you hand it over, once you lose the ability to think beyond the screen, beyond the feed, beyond the narrative, they've already won. You'll believe what they want you to believe. You'll forget what they want you to forget. You'll call it freedom, but it will feel hollow, because it is. This is the war John Wheeler tried to expose. Not a war fought in headlines or history books. A war inside your own head. A war waged quietly, systematically, and globally. And the battlefield is everywhere you go, on every screen, in every conversation, in every belief you didn't question. And unless you start paying attention, you'll keep living in a body that moves, speaks, and functions, while your awareness is kept in chains. But it doesn't have to stay that way. There's a moment, brief and unsettling, when you begin to see it. You catch it in the silence between distractions, in the discomfort behind your smile, in that aching sense that none of this feels real anymore. That your life, as you've been living it, is more of a response than a choice. That the thoughts you think, the desires you chase, the values you hold, none of them came from you. They were installed, drip-fed, refined over years of exposure and repetition. And in that moment, you're not going crazy, you're waking up. Wheeler understood that waking up wasn't some dramatic moment of enlightenment. It was a slow, painful process of unlearning. of noticing the simulation not as something futuristic or digital, but as something already here, disguised as everyday life. He saw how the system doesn't just imprison you with laws. It does it with expectations, with roles, with language. You're told who to be before you know who you are. You're rewarded for fitting in and punished, subtly, socially, economically, for stepping out. This simulation isn't built with code. It's built with meaning, or more accurately, the removal of it. You're kept busy but bored, connected but isolated, fed but starved. You perform tasks, meet deadlines, pay bills, but none of it touches your soul. None of it fills you. That's not accidental. That's design. Because if you're empty, you're easier to control. If you're numb, you won't resist. And if you're surrounded by others just as disconnected, you'll call it normal. That's how the illusion maintains itself. Not through force, but through agreement. The system teaches you to question your instincts and trust its authority. That discomfort you feel when something doesn't add up, you were trained to dismiss it. That curiosity you felt as a child, it was replaced with curriculum. That voice in your head that says, "This can't be all there is." They drowned it out with noise. Your stillness became anxiety. Your wonder became rebellion. Your authenticity became risk. And you adapted because you had to. But deep down, you've always known something wasn't right. You felt the pull, the urge to slow down, to question, to reconnect. And every time you did, the simulation pulled you back, through fear, through urgency, through the shame of falling behind. That's the trap, convincing you that your worth is tied to how well you perform in a system designed to suppress you. Waking up means breaking that link. It means giving yourself permission to feel again, to listen, not to the algorithm, but to the quiet voice within you that hasn't forgotten who you are. It means stepping back from the scroll, from the feed, from the endless loop of comparison and consumption, and asking, who am I when I'm not reacting? What do I believe when no one's watching? What does freedom look like if I stop trying to earn it? It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming present. It's about replacing habits with awareness, patterns with intention, numbness with feeling. And that kind of awakening doesn't look radical on the outside. It's subtle, it's internal, but it's powerful. Because once you start living with awareness, you stop being predictable. You stop being programmable. You stop being useful to a system that feeds on your distraction and docility. You become dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a conscious one. You ask real questions. You move with intention. You reclaim your time, your focus, your mind. You begin to see the simulation not as an unchangeable reality, but as a structure you can move through without becoming part of it. You become the glitch, the variable they can't control. And that's when things start to shift, because the simulation only works if you believe in it. And the moment you stop, the whole thing starts to crack. Now that you've seen the script, you can't unsee it. Now that you've felt the hollowness, the loop, the quiet ache of disconnection, you can't pretend it's normal anymore. And that's the beginning of everything. Because once you recognize the noise for what it is, a distraction, you begin to hear the signal again. Your signal, the one that was there before the programming, before the conditioning, before the fear, the one that's been whispering under the static this whole time. Wake up. The system didn't just want your attention, it wanted your allegiance. It wanted you to defend the very things that have been draining you. It wanted you to fight for illusions and to distrust your own knowing. It wanted you to doubt your intuition, your stillness, your discomfort. Because in those moments, in those cracks in the rhythm, you touch something real. And when you do, you begin to reclaim yourself. Reclaiming the signal means starting with your attention. What you give it to, what you feed. Every scroll, every headline, every argument that pulls you away from yourself is part of the machinery. But when you pause, when you choose stillness over stimulation, reflection over reaction, you're not just stepping back, you're stepping out. You're breaking the cycle, and in that space, you begin to remember what it means to be human. They made you believe that life is a race, that you're always behind, that there's something else to chase, something else to buy, something else to prove. But it's a trap. The faster you run, the less you feel. The more you accumulate, the more empty you become. That's the formula. Keep you distracted, depleted, and disconnected, and you'll never stop to ask why you feel so lost. But the truth is simple. Your soul isn't missing. It's buried. Under schedules, under screens, under expectations that were never yours to begin with. It's time to strip them away. To stop seeking permission to be whole. To stop waiting for the world to tell you it's safe to be awake. The world doesn't need your obedience. It needs your awareness. It needs people willing to feel again, to think critically, to speak truthfully, to live deliberately. That starts with what you consume, not just food or media, but thoughts, beliefs, relationships. Who are you becoming when you surround yourself with what's been designed to numb you? Who do you serve when your habits align with systems that exploit you? Reclaiming the signal is about aligning your life with what feeds your spirit, not just your schedule. It's choosing conversations that spark thought, not arguments that drain you. It's choosing silence over noise, depth over performance, real over curated. And this isn't just about you. Because when you start living from signal, you send out a frequency. Others feel it. You give them permission to do the same. Awakening is contagious, but only if you live it, not just talk about it. The system has always depended on your silence, your sleep, your cooperation. It's built on the assumption that you'll keep playing your part without questioning the script. But now, you've seen behind the curtain. You've felt the falseness. And that awareness is your leverage. Because once you see the pattern, you don't fall for it again. Once you've felt the truth, you can't go back to pretending. You're not just unplugging from the illusion. You're re-entering your own life, fully. And that is the most radical thing you can do. The soft apocalypse isn't coming. It's already here. You've just been taught to mistake survival for life. You eat, sleep, work, scroll, repeat, and they call that living. But John Wheeler saw the cracks in the facade. He saw that most people weren't asleep. They were sedated. Consciousness was slipping through their fingers, not in a dramatic collapse, but in a slow, calculated bleed. One decision at a time. One compromise after another. One suppressed thought, one silenced intuition, one repressed truth. Until the lights were still on, but no one was home. Wheeler's death was a message, but it wasn't meant to terrify. It was meant to warn, to shake those who could still be shaken. He knew what the end looked like. Not bodies in the street, but souls in cages. A future where you obey without thinking, agree without understanding, and exist without ever truly being alive. His death was the cost of saying what wasn't allowed. But his silence, forced as it was, doesn't have to be the end of the story. Because once you see that you're already dead, the only move left is resurrection. Not the religious kind, not mythology, but a return to full spectrum awareness. To reclaim the pieces of yourself scattered by the systems you were born into. That means facing everything, especially the parts you've been taught to ignore. Your instincts, your memories, your defiance, your hunger for more. They've told you these things are dangerous, childish, unrealistic, but they're not. They're the parts of you that refuse to die. Reclaiming awareness means moving differently through the world. You stop chasing what you were taught to value. You start questioning what success, truth, and freedom really mean. You break the addiction to busyness. You stop feeding systems that demand your silence in exchange for comfort. You realize that no amount of approval or possessions can make up for a life unlived. You stop numbing yourself with distractions and start feeling everything, even the discomfort, because it means you're alive again. And it's not easy. The path to awareness isn't smooth. It's raw, it's inconvenient, and it's lonely at times. You'll grieve the version of yourself that followed the script. You'll lose people who can't follow you where you're going. But you'll gain something far more valuable: yourself. The version of you that was never meant to be molded, silenced, or sold. The version that sees the game for what it is and refuses to play by rules written to keep you small. Wheeler's life may have ended in a landfill, but his awareness didn't. It lives on in every person who dares to ask deeper questions, in every whisper that says, "This can't be all there is," in every quiet decision to reclaim your time, your thoughts, your truth. The system counted on you never noticing, but you did. And now that you have, the only question is, what will you do with that awareness? This is your line in the sand. You can't unknow what you now know. The facade has cracks, and the truth is pouring through. The only thing left to decide is whether you'll keep watching from behind the glass or step into the fire of your own becoming. Don't waste what you've just seen. Subscribe to Insights Academy below. Get your free copy of the Kybalion and go deeper than this platform will ever allow. You're not just signing up for a newsletter, you're reclaiming the truth they buried. And here's the real test. None of what you just learned will matter unless you understand what comes next. Click on the video you see right here. That's where the rest of the puzzle unfolds. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."